Okay, allow me to be a little bit controversial. And what I'm saying does relate to documenting your journey, and I'm saying it to grab your attention, but I am going somewhere. So hang on, stay with me. If you are a junior developer, if you are someone trying to break into this industry, you are a burden. I told you it was going to hurt. Now, you're not really a burden. Allow me to explain. I want you to start wearing the hat of the other person, thinking about what they think about you. What do they value? What do they want? So, employers are thinking when you're coming through a coding bootcamp, when you're new to this, when you're junior, they think you know nothing. Now, you and I both know you've probably learned quite a lot in the last few weeks and months, possibly years, and you want to be credited for that, and you should be. You've learned so much. However, that's not how other people think. They think junior means you know nothing, literally nothing. Now, that's not fair, but what you're going to do to counteract that is say, yes, but look at my certificate. Doesn't that prove that I know something? Now, unfortunately, and I do disagree, unfortunately, the industry doesn't value your coding bootcamp certificate. And I know that's controversial. As someone who went through and did a degree, I can openly say no one cared about my degree certificate either. It's of no value to anybody. It's of value to me. I know the amount of effort I put in to get that. I know the pain, the blood, sweat and tears, and there were many tears, believe me, at the start of my coding journey. So other people don't see that value, and that's why I encourage you to document your journey. We need to unpack that value so that other people can appreciate and understand it. So we're doing it to allow people in. This is where the build in public thing is so important. And that's why I encourage you to document your journey, I want you to do that on LinkedIn, where the recruiters and employers are looking at you so that they can't fail but to see your value. Now, they think you're a burden and they think you're expensive. And you're probably sat there thinking, well, I'm much cheaper than a senior developer. But when they think you know nothing, they're thinking, okay, I could employ you and you're not going to be effective. In fact, you're quite dependent on others for help. So I need to give you my senior developer, my most senior developer, to train you every day. So they have to give you 8 hours of hand holding. So you're not really that effective for me yet. And don't get me wrong, I don't agree with this, but this is the way people tend to think. And so I'm not going to get my value for money out of you yet. And I'm not going to get value for money or as much value for money out of my senior developer because they have to hold your hand for 8 hours a day. I lose them for the next few weeks or months until you get up to speed. Now, that is very expensive when you combine the two salaries. And that's why people are reluctant, because they think not only is it going to be expensive, but it's also going to be detrimental to the speed of my development team. I'm losing a valuable resource. So what we're trying to show when we're documenting our journey, and this helps a lot of the time when people are saying, I get imposter syndrome about trying to teach people when I don't feel like I know enough. When I'm documenting a journey, trying to say, here's how you do this, here's how you do that. And I say, you don't need to teach somebody. That's not what we're trying to show. You don't need to show excellence on day one. In fact, that is the fastest route to imposter syndrome. I can understand that. But what we're trying to say is, I'm proactive. I actually don't need 8 hours of hand holding all day. I've learned a lot from my course already. I have my qualification. I've got the foundations set. But now we need to show, because like I say, they still think you don't know anything. We need to show what you do know, and then what you're doing with that knowledge, how you've taken that knowledge in and now you're applying it. So you're saying, I don't need 8 hours of hand holding. I might need an hour or two of guidance, and I'll be proactive about doing the rest. Now, this doesn't mean that they're suddenly going to go, finally I understand the value of junior developers. If they're against junior developers, they're going to be against junior developers. At least you found out on day one. But if someone's in that space where they're thinking we would take on a junior if they showed that they weren't going to be too much of a burden, This is where you're going to stand out against all of your competitors, all of the other people finishing boot camps, all of the other people trying to break into the industry who are just saying, look, I've got evidence, it's a certificate. But when you've all got the certificate, you're now going to stand above and go, oh, I've got the certificate, I've got that foundation, but I didn't stop there. I took that and I'm doing something with it. I'm proactive about learning the rest. One of the stories I normally tell about this is when people are learning to drive, they think when you pass your driving test, you're a fantastic driver. You're Lewis Hamilton. Now, we all know you're not Lewis Hamilton the day you pass your driving test. You actually learn to drive after you pass your driving test. And I would argue you learn to code after your coding boot camp, after your qualification. That these qualifications, or whether you read a book, whether you do a Udemy course, no matter what you do, whatever it is, gets you to that base starting point where you can then explore the documentation, explore your chosen niche, explore your chosen tech stack. That's the jumping off point for you. Now we need to showcase you haven't stopped at that point. That's you going, thanks for that base marker, now watch me grow. And that's a very powerful story. And if you can communicate that effectively, you'll stand out way above the rest. So that's why I want you to document the journey in this way. Hope that makes sense. See you in the next one.